The air in the grand ballroom of the St. Regis was thick with the scent of pine needles from the ridiculously large Christmas tree and the cloying sweetness of expensive champagne. It was the annual end-of-year gala for Sterling Innovations, a night meant to celebrate our collective successes. For me, it was supposed to be the culmination of 3 years of relentless work, the night my project, Odyssey, would finally be unveiled as the company's shining star for the next decade. I smoothed down the silk of my emerald green dress, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. It was a nervous, excited beat. I had no idea that in less than an hour it would be hammering with a completely different rhythm, one of fury and ruin. My boss, Michael Sterling, stood near the stage, a charismatic god in a tailored Tom Ford suit. He held a glass of what I knew was a 25-year-old Macallan, laughing with a circle of board members. He had a way of commanding a room, of making everyone feel like they were the most important person there, even as he was calculating their worth to him. His wife, Sophia, was a quiet, elegant shadow at his side. She was beautiful in a fragile, porcelain way, dressed in a muted silver gown that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. Her smiles never quite reached her eyes, a detail I'd noticed over the years but never truly understood. Until now. I had spent the last 36 months of my life pouring everything into Odyssey. It was a revolutionary logistics AI, a system so advanced it could predict global supply chain disruptions with 98% accuracy. It wasn't just code. It was an intricate living algorithm that I had birthed from nothing. I'd worked 80-hour weeks, missed birthdays, anniversaries, and funerals. I'd subsisted on cold coffee and the sheer, unadulterated passion for my creation. Michael had been my champion, or so I thought. He provided the resources, the team, the budget. He'd called me his star programmer, his visionary. He promised me the world when Odyssey launched. The promises had curdled 2 days ago. He'd called me into his glass-walled office, the Manhattan skyline glittering behind him like a prize he owned. He was beaming, his teeth impossibly white. Emily, my girl, he'd started, gesturing for me to sit. The presentation for the gala is ready. I've just finished the final touches. You finished it? I asked, a small knot of unease tightening in my stomach. I had sent him the final draft for review, but it was complete. My presentation. Just a few tweaks to make it really pop, he said, waving a dismissive hand. He slid a tablet across the polished mahogany desk. I picked it up. My name was nowhere to be found. The presentation, my slides, my data, my projections, they were all there. But the title slide read, Odyssey, a Sterling Innovation by Michael Sterling. I stared at it, the blood draining from my face. Michael, what is this? Where's my name? The team's credits are on the last slide, but I'm the project lead, the architect. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. His expression shifted from paternal warmth to something cold and hard as the glass surrounding us. Emily, let's be realistic. You're a brilliant coder, the best I have, but you can't command a room of investors. You can't be the face of a billion-dollar paradigm shift. I am the face of this company. My name carries the weight, the authority. It's better for the project, for the company. Better for the project? I could hear my voice trembling, a mix of disbelief and rising anger. Michael, I built this. Every line of code, every predictive model, it came from me. This is my life's work. And you have been very, very well compensated for your work, he said, his voice dropping to a low, menacing tone. You're an employee. You did the job I paid you to do. Now I'm going to do mine, sell it. This is how the world works, Emily. Don't be naive. Your name on a slide deck doesn't matter. The success of the project matters. Your continued employment here matters. Do you understand me? The threat was clear, hanging in the air between us. Take the hit or take a hike. I felt a profound, soul-crushing humiliation. He wasn't just taking credit, he was erasing me. He was telling me that my mind, my effort, my creation, was just a commodity he had purchased, like the expensive leather of his chair. I didn't say anything. I just stood up, placed the tablet back on his desk, and walked out of his office, the silent fury building inside me like a pressure cooker. I had 2 days. 2 days to decide between my career and my integrity. By the time I slipped on my emerald dress for the party, I had made my choice. But I had also made another, more secret plan. A contingency. Now, standing in the ballroom, I watched him take the stage. The applause was thunderous. He was a master showman, working the crowd, thanking them for a year of unprecedented growth. He spoke a vision of innovation, of a future forged by Sterling. Then he launched into it. My presentation. He used my exact words, my cadence, my carefully crafted narrative. He spoke of the late nights and the eureka moments as if they were his own. With every word he stole, a piece of me turned to ice. I saw some of my team members in the crowd, their faces a mixture of confusion and awkward discomfort. They knew it was my work, but they also knew who signed their paychecks. They looked down at their drinks, at their shoes, anywhere but at me. I felt 1,000 pairs of eyes on me. The whispers had already started, the corporate grapevine working its magic. That's Emily Parker, she was the lead on Odyssey. I heard Michael took it over at the last minute. Tough break. I was a footnote in my own success story. The humiliation was a physical thing, a hot flush that crawled up my neck. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run onto that stage and expose him for the fraud he was. But I knew that would only make me look hysterical, unhinged. He would win. He always won. The presentation ended with a dramatic flourish, a simulation of Odyssey rerouting global shipping around a hypothetical pandemic in real time. The crowd was on its feet, the applause deafening. It was a triumph. My triumph. He stood there, soaking it in, his arms outstretched as if he were being crucified in glory. He finally quieted the crowd, a magnanimous smile plastered on his face. Thank you, thank you. It's moments like these that make all the sacrifice worthwhile. Then his eyes found me in the crowd. He locked his gaze with mine, a glint of cruel victory in them, and he decided to twist the knife. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the changing of the guard here at Sterling, he announced, his voice booming through the speakers. The room fell silent. Sometimes, for a company to evolve, we must shed the past. We must make difficult decisions to ensure we are lean, hungry, and always moving forward. And so, it is with a heavy heart that I must announce this will be Emily Parker's last night with us. We wish her well in her future endeavors. A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. It was brutal, unfathomably, publicly brutal. He hadn't just fired me, he had executed me in front of the entire industry. He was making an example of me. This is what happens when you don't play by my rules. My legs felt weak, my vision tunneled until the only thing I could see was his triumphant smirk. The silence was suffocating. Everyone stared, a sea of pitying, shocked, and a few secretly gleeful faces. My career in this city was over. He had salted the earth. Something inside me snapped. The ice that had been forming around my heart shattered, and what was left was not fire, but a cold, diamond-hard resolve. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I held his gaze, my expression utterly blank. I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes. He expected tears. He wanted a scene. I would not give him the satisfaction. Slowly, deliberately, I turned and walked towards the coat check at the back of the ballroom. The crowd parted for me as if I were a leper. The only sound was the soft clack of my heels on the polished marble floor. I handed my ticket to the stunned attendant and accepted my black wool coat. I didn't put it on. I just held it draped over my arm. My path back to the exit would take me right past the stage where Michael was now standing, awkwardly trying to resume the festive atmosphere. And right beside him, having descended the small stairs, was Sophia. She was looking at me, her face a pale, unreadable mask. But her eyes, for the first time, I saw a flicker of something in them. Not pity, something else. An emotion I couldn't name. This was it, my contingency plan. The one I had unearthed during a late-night coding session when I'd accidentally stumbled into a password-protected, encrypted corner of the company's server while searching for old project data. A folder labeled with a single innocuous word. Amore. Curiosity had gotten the better of me. It had taken me 2 days to crack the encryption. What I found inside had nothing to do with business. It was a collection of files, emails, photos, chat logs. A secret life and a key. I walked towards them, my steps even and measured. Michael's smile faltered as he saw me approaching. A few of his board members shifted nervously. Did they think I was going to physically attack him? I stopped, not in front of him, but directly in front of his wife. I leaned in close, as if to offer a polite, consoling farewell. Her expensive perfume, something with notes of jasmine and sandalwood, filled my senses. I looked directly into her wide, questioning blue eyes. My heart was pounding, a wild, terrifying rhythm, but my voice, when it came out, was a calm, steady whisper, audible only to her. I only had to say two words that were the key to everything, the name of a folder and the password to unlock it. Amore Ariana. I didn't wait for a reaction. I didn't look back at Michael. I simply straightened up, turned, and walked away. I could feel every eye in the room on my back as I pushed through the grand double doors and stepped out into the cold December night. The snow had just begun to fall, soft white flakes melting on the warm pavement. I took a deep breath, the frigid air stinging my lungs. I had no job, no career, and no idea what I would do tomorrow. But I knew one thing. The empire that Michael Sterling had built would turn to dust before the dessert was even served. The walk home was surreal. The city, usually a symphony of chaotic noise, seemed muted, distant. Each snowflake that landed on my bare arms felt like a tiny, cold spark against my overheated skin. The adrenaline that had surged through me in the ballroom was now a low, electric hum beneath the surface, keeping me upright, keeping me moving. I didn't take a cab. I walked the 20 blocks to my apartment, the physical exertion a welcome distraction from the maelstrom in my mind. I was a ghost moving through the festive streets, invisible to the laughing couples and families bundled in scarves and hats. They were living in a world that, just an hour ago, had been mine. Now, I was in a different reality entirely, one of my own making. My apartment felt cold and cavernously empty when I let myself in. I dropped my coat and keys on the floor, not bothering to turn on any lights except for the dim glow of my multi-monitor workstation in the corner. This was my sanctuary, my command center. It was here that I had built Odyssey, and it was here that I had unearthed the weapon that would destroy its thief. I sank into my ergonomic chair, the silence pressing in on me. The wait was the hardest part. I had lit the fuse and walked away, and now I could do nothing but listen for the explosion. Had I read Sophia correctly? I had banked everything on that one fleeting expression I saw in her eyes. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. A shared understanding of being underestimated, of being overshadowed by the blinding charisma of Michael Sterling. I had given her a name and a password. A key. But a key is useless if the person holding it is too afraid to open the door. My mind drifted back to that night, 3 weeks ago. I was deep in a debugging cycle for Odyssey, chasing a phantom glitch that only appeared under a specific set of high-pressure server loads. It was 3 a.m. to find the source. I needed to access archived server logs from a similar, older project Michael had spearheaded 5 years prior, a project called Helios. As a system architect, I had high-level administrative access. I was digging through the deep, forgotten directories of the main server, a digital labyrinth of abandoned projects and obsolete data. That's when I saw it, a folder nested illogically within the Helios archives that had a recent modification date. It was named Amore. The name was so out of place in the sterile, corporate file structure that it practically glowed. I tried to open it. Access denied. My admin credentials, which could unlock almost anything, were useless. This was protected by a separate, personal encryption. It was a digital fortress in the middle of an open field. For anyone else, it would have been a dead end. For me, it was an irresistible challenge. Michael was arrogant. He believed his systems were impenetrable because he paid top dollar for them, but he didn't understand them on a fundamental level. He didn't understand the architect. I didn't attack the encryption head-on. That would be noisy and leave a trace. Instead, I went hunting for the key. I spent the next 48 hours in a feverish, coffee-fueled haze, writing a custom script that analyzed Michael's digital footprint across the network. I analyzed his keystroke patterns on unsecured documents, his password reset habits, his metadata. I built a psychological profile of his digital life. He was a man of routines and ego. His passwords would be something meaningful to him, something that made him feel powerful or clever. My script churned through thousands of permutations based on his life. Names of his yachts, his favorite vintage wines, his mother's maiden name, his prep school motto. Nothing. Then I had a thought. I expanded my search to the company's financial servers looking for hidden expenditures, payments that didn't quite add up, and I found it. A monthly wire transfer disguised as a consulting fee to a boutique design firm. The firm consisted of a single employee, Ariana Dubois. A quick, discreet search revealed she was a sculptor, an artist Michael had ostentatiously mentored a few years back. She had been the lead designer on the Helios project, and she had resigned abruptly around the same time the Amore folder was created. The name was too perfect. Ariana. I fed it into my script. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The password wasn't just her name. It was a phrase, a testament to his staggering ego. Amore, Ariana. My love, Ariana. He had hidden his secret life under the name of his secret love. The folder opened. My breath hitched. It was a treasure trove of damning evidence. There were years of emails, filled with declarations of love and promises of a future together, a future without Sophia. There were photos, intimate, compromising photos from lavish trips to Monaco, Santorini, Tokyo, all billed to a corporate expense account as client meetings. There were chat logs, detailing their shared contempt for his frigid, boring wife. But the real poison was in the subfolders. Michael wasn't just cheating, he was systematically embezzling. He had been funneling millions of dollars from Sterling Innovations into offshore accounts under Ariana's name. He had created shell corporations to award fraudulent contracts to her design firm, paying for her lavish lifestyle and art studio with company money. He was using Sterling Innovations, the empire Sophia's family money had helped build, as his personal piggy bank to fund his affair. The files contained scanned bank statements, wire transfer confirmations, falsified invoices. It was a complete, irrefutable blueprint of his betrayal, both personal and professional. He hadn't just broken his marriage vows, he had committed massive corporate fraud. I sat there, staring at the screen, the cool blue light illuminating my face. I felt a wave of nausea. This was bigger than a stolen project. This was a man who had built his entire life on a foundation of lies. I copied the entire folder onto a small, encrypted drive, wiped my tracks from the server logs, and logged off. I didn't know what I would do with it. It felt like holding a nuclear weapon. I hoped I would never have to use it. Michael's speech at the gala made that decision for me. My phone buzzed on the desk, jolting me back to the present. It was a text from Chloe, a junior coder on my team. A good kid, smart and loyal. Chloe, Emily, are you okay? That was insane. I typed back a quick reply. Me, I'm fine, Chloe, at home, what's happening there? The 3 dots of her typing appeared and disappeared frantically. Chloe, oh my God, you missed it. After you left, everything went weird. Michael tried to get the party going again, but no one was really into it. Then Sophia Sterling, she just stood there for a minute. Her face was like a statue. She pulled out her phone and started typing, just typing and typing. My heart started to pound. This was it. Me, and then. Chloe, and then she walked over to Mr. Harrison and Mr. Chen from the board. She didn't say anything to Michael, just walked right past him. She showed them her phone. I was close enough to see their faces. They looked like they'd seen a ghost. Harrison immediately took out his phone and made a call. 5 minutes later, 2 guys in suits I've never seen before showed up. They weren't party guests, they were lawyers. The hum of adrenaline in my veins intensified. Sophia wasn't screaming or crying. She was acting, decisively. Me, where? Michael. Chloe, that's the crazy part. The lawyers, Harrison, and Sophia all went with Michael into one of the private conference rooms off the ballroom. They've been in there for almost an hour. The music is off. Everyone is just standing around whispering. They've closed the bar. People are starting to leave. It feels like a funeral. Whatever you did, Emily, it worked. A cold, grim satisfaction settled over me. It was a dark, ugly feeling, but it was satisfying nonetheless. I had handed the weapon to Sophia, and she had immediately known exactly where to aim it. She didn't go for the heart, she went for the head. The board, the money. I thanked Chloe and told her to go home and stay out of it. I opened my laptop and pulled up a financial news site, setting up alerts for Sterling Innovations. For the next 20 minutes, I just sat there, watching the screen, my reflection a pale shadow on the dark glass. Then at 11:52 p.m., the first alert flashed across my screen. It was from the Wall Street Journal. Sterling Innovations, SDRG, trading halted pending material announcement. Sources report emergency board meeting UNDERWAY following unexpected departure of CEO Michael Sterling from company gala. A second alert followed, from a major news wire. Breaking, Michael Sterling, CEO of Sterling Innovations, placed on immediate administrative leave. Board cites allegations of serious financial misconduct. An internal investigation has been launched. I leaned back in my chair, the tension finally releasing from my shoulders. The breath I didn't even realize I'd been holding escaped my lips in a long, slow sigh. It was done. The first domino had fallen. I hadn't just exposed a cheating husband. I had triggered a corporate implosion. The whispers in the ballroom had now become headlines that would be flashing on screens around the world. The empire of lies, built with Sophia's money and my mind, was beginning to crumble. And I, sitting alone in my dark apartment, was the architect of it all. The night was far from over, but Michael Sterling's reign was. I had a feeling the dessert was the last thing on anyone's mind. Sleep was a foreign country I had no visa for. I spent the rest of the night bathed in the glow of my monitors, a digital vulture circling the carcass of Michael Sterling's career. The initial news alerts were just the tremor before the earthquake. By 2 a.m., Sterling Innovations was trending globally. Financial reporters, smelling blood in the water, were a frenzy of activity. Anonymous sources from within the company were leaking details like a sieve. The vague financial misconduct was slowly being fleshed out with delicious, reputation-destroying specifics. Misappropriation of corporate funds, potential embezzlement, fraudulent expense reports. My phone became a minefield. A few brave colleagues, like Chloe, sent messages of covert support and awe. Most, however, were texts of panicked inquiry, fishing for information, trying to gauge which way the wind was blowing so they could align themselves for survival. I ignored them all. They were passengers on a ship I had just scuttled. I had no life rafts to offer. The narrative being spun in the media was fascinating. The board, led by Chairman David Harrison, was positioning itself as the swift, decisive hero, acting immediately to protect shareholder interests upon discovering troubling irregularities. Sophia was painted as the dignified, wronged wife, a victim of her husband's hubris. There was no mention of a fired programmer. I was a ghost, a phantom catalyst, my role completely obscured by the mushroom cloud of the explosion itself. And that was exactly how I wanted it. Anonymity was my shield. The sun began to bleed through my blinds, casting long, dusty stripes across the room. I felt hollowed out, scoured clean by the night's events. The grim satisfaction had faded, leaving behind a strange and unsettling ache. It was the ache of a phantom limb. Odyssey was gone. My project, my creation, was now entangled in a sordid scandal. It would be dissected by lawyers and accountants, its code scrutinized not for its elegance, but for its connection to fraudulent budgets. It felt like my child had been taken into protective custody because its father was a monster. I finally drifted into a shallow, dreamless sleep around 7 a.m., slumped in my chair. I was woken 2 hours later by a persistent, formal-sounding buzz from my phone. It wasn't a text message alert. It was a secure email notification from an encrypted address. My heart lurched. I leaned forward, my eyes gritty with exhaustion, and read the message. From secure encrypted address. To Emily Parker. Subject, a matter of mutual interest. Ms. Parker. My name is Olivia Chen. I am legal counsel for Mrs. Sophia Sterling. I believe we have a mutual interest in ensuring that the full truth regarding the recent activities of Michael Sterling is brought to light with irrefutable clarity. Mrs. Sterling has informed me that you may be in possession of information that is pertinent to the ongoing investigation by the board and, potentially, by federal authorities. She was, understandably, not at liberty to discuss the specifics of how you came to share your insights with her at the gala. We are moving quickly. The board is attempting to contain this as an internal matter to prevent a catastrophic stock collapse. They wish to sever Michael Sterling, recover what they can, and move on. My client's interests, however, are more comprehensive. She intends to pursue a full dissolution of their shared assets and ensure that Mr. Sterling is held accountable to the fullest extent of the law for his actions, both corporate and personal. To do this, we need more than just the key you provided. We need the door, the room, and everything inside it. We need the source data. I have taken the liberty of investigating your professional background. Your reputation for discretion and integrity is impeccable. You are also the only other person, besides my client, who understands the gravity of the situation without needing an explanation. I propose a meeting. Today, at a location of your choosing. We will, of course, ensure your complete legal protection and provide generous compensation for your time and any evidence you can provide. A simple yes in response to this email will suffice. A car will be sent to your location within the hour. Ms. Parker, you started this. I am offering you the opportunity to finish it. The alternative is to let a group of men in a boardroom decide what form justice will take. In my experience, that form usually benefits the men in the boardroom. Sincerely, Olivia Chen, counsel for Sophia Sterling. I read the email 3 times. Olivia Chen. I knew the name. She was one of the most feared divorce and corporate litigation attorneys in the city, a shark who didn't just win cases but annihilated her opponents. Her message was a masterclass in psychological leverage. She praised my integrity, acknowledged my intelligence, and presented me with a stark choice framed as a moral imperative. Remain a ghost and let others control the outcome, or step into the light and ensure the job was done right. The phrase generous compensation was not lost on me. I was unemployed, my career prospects in tatters. Michael had made sure of that, but it wasn't about the money. It was about the last line, you started this. I am offering you the opportunity to finish it. She was right. I had acted out of a primal need for justice, for vengeance. I had exposed the rot, but I hadn't controlled the demolition. The board would protect themselves first and foremost. They would cut Michael out like a cancer, but they would do everything in their power to salvage the company's image, which meant burying as much of the truth as possible. They would spin it, manage it, and in the end, Michael would walk away wounded, but not destroyed. He would likely lose his company, but he had millions stashed away in those offshore accounts with Ariana. He would land on a beach somewhere, a disgraced millionaire, but a millionaire nonetheless. Sophia, on the other hand, wanted utter destruction. Annihilation. The kind of justice that leaves nothing but scorched earth behind. She wanted to reclaim not just the money, but her life, her dignity, and the years he had stolen from her under a veneer of respectable marriage. She wanted to ensure he could never, ever recover. And she needed my help to do it. My encrypted drive, sitting in a fireproof safe under my desk, felt like it was radiating heat. It contained everything. The unredacted bank statements, the emails that spoke not just of fraud, but of deep, personal cruelty towards his wife, the photos that would obliterate any shred of public sympathy he might have garnered. I held the evidence that could turn a corporate scandal into a federal criminal case and a high society divorce into a public immolation. I looked around my apartment at the life I had built. Quiet, orderly, logical, the life of a programmer. I was a woman who dealt in code, in absolute truths of ones and zeros. The world Olivia Chen was inviting me into was a world of gray areas, of legal warfare and public manipulation. It was dangerous. Michael was a powerful man. Even cornered, he would be vicious. He would have lawyers, investigators. If my role became public, he would stop at nothing to destroy me, to paint me as a disgruntled employee, a corporate spy, a liar. But then I thought of his smirk on that stage. The casual, cruel way he had dismissed my life's work and cast me aside in front of everyone I knew. The chilling contempt in his emails about Sophia. He wasn't just a thief, he was a parasite. And parasites needed to be burned out completely, lest they find a new host. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. The choice was clear. There was no going back. I had already stepped off the cliff. I might as well learn to fly on the way down. I typed the single word Olivia Chen had requested. Yes. I hit send. Then I walked over to the safe, unlocked it, and took out the small, black, encrypted hard drive. I slipped it into my pocket. It felt as heavy as a stone and as powerful as a sword. I had no idea what the next hour or the next day would bring. But for the first time since I'd whispered those 2 words to Sophia, I felt a flicker of something beyond vengeance. I felt a sense of purpose. This was no longer just about me. It was about justice. and I was about to become its primary instrument. The car that arrived was not a taxi or a rideshare. It was a black Audi A8L, the kind of vehicle that whispers wealth and power, its tinted windows reflecting the gray morning sky like obsidian mirrors. A man in a simple, perfectly tailored black suit, whose name I would never know, stepped out and opened the rear door for me. He didn't ask my name. He simply nodded and said, "Ms. Parker." The interior was a cocoon of buttery leather and polished wood, silent and insulated from the city's frantic pulse. As we glided through traffic with unnerving smoothness, I felt a profound sense of crossing a threshold. I was leaving my old life behind on the curb and entering a world where things were handled. The destination was not an office building, but the penthouse of the Mandarin Oriental, a glittering spire overlooking Central Park. We bypassed the lobby, taking a private elevator that opened directly into a sprawling suite. The view was staggering, the entire park laid out below like a green and brown tapestry. But my attention was immediately captured by the two women standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows. Olivia Chen was exactly as I had pictured her. She was tall and whip-thin, dressed in a severe but impossibly chic charcoal gray suit. Her black hair was cut in a sharp, geometric bob that framed a face of intelligent severity. Her eyes, dark and piercing, sized me up in a single, comprehensive glance that felt like a full-body MRI. She was not a woman who wasted time on pleasantries. Beside her, however, was the real surprise. It was Sophia Sterling. She was unrecognizable from the fragile, decorative woman at the gala. The muted silver gown was gone, replaced by tailored black trousers and a simple, elegant cashmere sweater. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe, tight knot at the nape of her neck. But the most startling change was her face. The vacant, porcelain passivity was gone. Her blue eyes, which had always seemed to absorb the light, now blazed with a cold, focused fire. The grief and humiliation had been forged into something harder, something lethal. If Michael had turned my heart to ice, he had turned his wife to steel. "Ms. Parker," Olivia said, her voice as crisp and cool as the air in the room. "Thank you for coming. This is my client, Sophia Sterling." Sophia stepped forward and extended a hand. Her grip was firm, her skin cool. "Emily," she said, her voice low but steady. "I can't," she began, then stopped, correcting herself. "I won't waste your time with platitudes. What you did last night, thank you. You gave me the one thing I thought I'd lost forever, a fighting chance." "He was going to destroy you both," Olivia stated, not as a question but as a fact. "Michael doesn't just fire people, he buries them. And he doesn't just cheat on his wife, he consumes her. We are here to ensure that he is the one who gets buried." She gestured to a glass table where a laptop and a small, complex-looking piece of hardware were sitting. "Is that the source data?" I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. I reached into my pocket, the small drive feeling both insignificant and monumental in my hand. I placed it on the table. Everything is here. The original files untouched. Emails, financial records, photos, server logs showing his access patterns. It's all protected by 256-bit AES encryption. The password is... "We won't need it," Olivia interrupted smoothly. A third person, a young man with a focused, intense demeanor I recognized as a fellow creature of the tech world, emerged from an adjoining room. He didn't speak, but simply sat at the table, plugged the drive into his hardware, and began typing furiously. "This is Aaron," Olivia explained. "He's one of ours. He'll verify the authenticity and integrity of the data. While he works, let's discuss your position in this." We moved to a seating area, a trio of stark white sofas arranged around a minimalist fireplace. Sophia and Olivia sat on one, a united front. I sat opposite them, feeling like I was in the most important job interview of my life. "You've taken an incredible risk, Emily," Sophia said, her eyes locked on mine. "Michael is a vindictive man. When he finds out, and he will find out, that you were involved, he'll come after you with everything he has." "Which is why your protection is our first priority," Olivia added. "We have already drafted a comprehensive legal shield. Any attempt by Michael or his associates to harass, slander, or legally intimidate you will be met with overwhelming force. We will also arrange for private security, effective immediately. But that's defense. Let's talk about offense and compensation. She leaned forward, her expression sharp. What I am about to outline is a two-pronged strategy. Prong one is the divorce. With the evidence you've provided, we will not just be filing for divorce. We will be filing for a complete asset seizure based on gross marital and financial misconduct. We will prove that the bulk of his wealth was generated through fraudulent means and that he used marital assets, assets Sophia's family provided as seed capital for the company, to fund his illegal activities. When we are done, he will not have a dime to his name. His offshore accounts will be frozen, his properties will have liens, and his reputation will be utterly toxic. My breath caught. This was beyond a simple divorce. This was a financial execution. Prong two, she continued, her voice dropping slightly, is criminal. The evidence on that drive is more than enough for the SEC to launch a full-scale investigation into securities fraud, and for the U.S. Attorney's Office to pursue charges of wire fraud and embezzlement. A corporate scandal can be survived. A federal indictment, followed by a prison sentence, cannot. Our goal is not just to bankrupt Michael Sterling. It's to put him in a cage. The sheer, brutal scope of their plan left me speechless. I had lit a match, and they were using it to detonate a fuel depot. Which brings us to you, Olivia said, her gaze unwavering. You are the key witness. Your testimony, corroborating the data's origin and context, will be invaluable. You will be compensated for this. We are prepared to offer you a sum of $5 million, placed in a protected trust, for your exclusive cooperation. $5 million. The number hung in the air, so vast it seemed unreal. It was life-changing money. It was never-work-again money. But as I looked at the number in my mind, it felt wrong. It felt like blood money. It made me a paid informant, a mercenary in their war. I took a deep breath, finding a reservoir of courage I didn't know I possessed. No, I said. Olivia's eyebrow arched, a millimeter of surprise on her otherwise impassive face. Sophia looked at me, a flicker of curiosity in her cold blue eyes. No, Olivia repeated. I don't want your money, I said, my voice gaining strength. Michael didn't just take my job, he tried to take my creation. He stood on that stage and presented my work, my soul, as his own. He erased me. If I take a payout, I'm just confirming that what I did has a price tag, that it can be bought. I looked directly at Sophia. He built his empire with your money and my work. You're taking back the money. I want my work back. A long silence filled the room, broken only by the soft, frantic clicking of Aaron's keyboard in the background. Sophia leaned forward, a slow, dangerous smile touching her lips for the first time. It transformed her face. What are you proposing, Emily? Odyssey, I said. When the dust settles, Sterling Innovations will be in ruins. The board will be desperate to salvage whatever they can. The company's greatest asset, the only thing that isn't tainted by Michael's fraud, is my project. Odyssey. It's my intellectual property. Michael presented it as his, but I have every email, every document, every line of code with my own digital signature and timestamp on my private servers. I can prove it's mine. I don't want $5 million. I want the rights to Odyssey. And I want seed funding to start my own company, with Odyssey as its flagship product. I want to build what he tried to steal. Olivia Chen sat back, a look of genuine, grudging admiration dawning on her face. She looked at Sophia, who was still smiling that cold, predatory smile. She doesn't want to be a witness, Sophia said softly, a newfound respect in her voice. She wants to be your successor. A much better deal, Olivia conceded. For you, it gives you an asset, not just a victory, and it gives Ms. Parker what she is owed. Justice, not just revenge. At that moment, Aaron stood up from the table. It's all here, he said, his voice quiet but absolute. Everything she said. The data is clean, the chains of custody are verifiable. It's a prosecutor's dream. And it's worse than you thought. He had a second lover, a board member's wife. He was using blackmail material against the board member to secure votes. It's all in the chat logs. Sophia's face hardened even further, if that were possible. The last vestiges of the victim were burned away, leaving only the executioner. Olivia stood up, a chillingly pleasant smile on her face. "Well, then, I believe we have a deal. Our legal team will draft the agreement for the intellectual property transfer and the seed funding. Welcome to the team, Ms. Parker." She walked over to her briefcase and pulled out a burner phone, handing it to me. "This is for you. It's the only way we will communicate from now on. My number is the only one in it." She then walked to the window, pulling out her own phone. I stood there, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was real. It was happening. "Who are you calling?" Sophia asked. Olivia looked out over the park, her reflection a sharp silhouette against the sky. "I am calling a friend at the Southern District of New York," she said calmly. "I think it's time to give him a heads up about a spectacular case of corporate fraud that's about to fall into his lap." She paused, her thumb hovering over the call button. "The appetizer is about to be served." The days that followed were a masterclass in controlled demolition. Olivia Chen didn't just light a fire, she orchestrated a firestorm. The phone call from the penthouse was the first lightning strike. Within hours, the Southern District of New York had convened a grand jury. Federal agents, armed with a warrant that cited Olivia's initial evidence briefing, raided the Sterling Innovations headquarters. They weren't the quiet, suited lawyers from the gala. They were the real deal, men and women in windbreakers with FBI emblazoned on the back, carrying out box after box of servers and files. The raid was timed for 9:01 a.m. on Monday morning, ensuring maximum media coverage. The images of Michael's corporate sanctuary being publicly disemboweled were on every news channel by noon. Michael, who had been holed up with his own team of high-priced lawyers attempting to spin the narrative of a simple internal disagreement, was blindsided. He was photographed leaving his lawyer's office, his face a mask of apoplectic rage and disbelief. The charismatic, untouchable titan of industry was gone. In his place was a haggard, hunted-looking man in a wrinkled suit, hounded by a pack of reporters shouting questions about Ariana Dubois and offshore accounts. My life, in stark contrast, became a world of quiet, strategic seclusion. I was moved from my apartment into a discreet, long-stay suite at a different luxury hotel under an assumed name. My private security detail consisted of 2 men, Ryan and Jacob, who were shadows of quiet professionalism. They spoke little but saw everything. They weren't there to protect me from a physical threat so much as to ensure my complete isolation from the chaos I had unleashed. My only link to the outside world was the burner phone Olivia had given me. Through it, I became a ghost in the machine of Michael's destruction. I had long, encrypted conference calls with Olivia and a team of federal prosecutors. I walked them through the data on the drive, explaining the complex architecture of Sterling's servers, showing them how I had found the Amore folder, and pointing out the digital breadcrumbs Michael had unknowingly left. I explained the falsified invoices, linking specific lines of code in Odyssey's budget allocation module to specific wire transfers to Ariana's shell corporation. I was no longer just the source. I was the expert witness, the digital translator turning cold data into a hot, prosecutable narrative of greed and deceit. During one of these calls, a young, ambitious assistant U.S. attorney named Nathan asked me, "Ms. Parker, what was your motivation for copying these files?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. Initially, it was intellectual curiosity. I stumbled upon a security anomaly and wanted to understand it. But when Michael Sterling stood on that stage, took credit for my work, and publicly humiliated me for his own gain, my motivation changed. It became about truth. He built his success on lies, and I was in possession of the proof. Olivia, who was also on the call, added smoothly, "Ms. Parker understood that her professional integrity was inextricably linked to the integrity of the company itself. She acted as a whistleblower, at great personal risk. She was shaping my legacy as much as she was shaping Michael's indictment." The information about the second affair, with Harper, the wife of a board member, Christopher, was the final, devastating blow. Olivia didn't leak it to the press. That would have been too crude. Instead, she arranged a private meeting with Christopher, presenting him with the irrefutable chat logs. The result was catastrophic for Michael. Christopher, a powerful and well-respected figure in the financial community, not only resigned from the board but flipped, becoming a cooperating witness for the prosecution in exchange for immunity. He provided a sworn affidavit detailing how Michael had blackmailed him into approving fraudulent budgets. The story of a simple affair and embezzlement metastasized into a far darker tale of extortion and corporate conspiracy. Sophia, meanwhile, played her part with chilling precision. She filed for divorce, and the court documents, which Olivia's team ensured were publicly accessible, were surgical in their brutality. They listed every betrayal, every stolen dollar, every secret trip. She was not the weeping, wronged wife. She was a creditor, a majority shareholder whose investment had been criminally misused. She systematically dismantled their shared life, her lawyers placing liens on everything from his art collection to his wine cellar. She even found Ariana Dubois, who was trying to flee the country in Zurich, and had her served with a civil suit that froze all of her assets, effectively trapping her and turning her into another potential witness against Michael. 2 weeks after the gala, the indictment came down. Michael Sterling was arrested at his home at dawn. The charges included wire fraud, securities fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. The man who had commanded a ballroom with a smirk was now the subject of a perp walk. His hands cuffed behind his back, his Tom Ford suit looking pathetic and ill-fitting under the harsh glare of camera flashes. He looked broken, not by remorse, but by the sheer shock of his own defeat. He had believed he was invincible. I had shown him he was just a man, and a deeply flawed one at that. With Michael's fall, Sterling Innovations went into a death spiral. The stock, once a darling of the tech sector, was worthless. The board was in disarray, facing shareholder lawsuits and a federal investigation of their own. Their only hope for survival, their only truly clean and valuable asset, was Odyssey. Just as Olivia had predicted, they became desperate. David Harrison, the now embattled chairman of the board, reached out to Sophia's legal team. He wanted to salvage the company by firewalling Odyssey from the rest of the scandal and spinning it off. This was the moment we had been waiting for. Olivia arranged the final meeting. It took place not in a penthouse suite, but in a sterile, neutral-ground law office boardroom that smelled of old paper and fear. I walked in, not as a fired employee, but as a principal in the negotiation. Sophia was there, a silent, powerful presence at my side. Olivia led the charge. David Harrison and the remaining board members looked like they had aged a decade in 2 weeks. Ms. Parker, Harrison began, his voice strained. We find ourselves in a complicated position. We want to make things right. The company would like to offer you a generous settlement and a public apology for the misunderstanding at the gala. There was no misunderstanding. David, Olivia cut in, her voice like a shard of ice. There was theft. And now you are presiding over a crime scene with one salvageable asset. An asset, it turns out, that you don't legally own. She produced a thick binder. We have incontrovertible proof that the intellectual property for Project Odyssey belongs to Ms. Parker. Every time-stamped log, every developmental milestone, every piece of proprietary code was authored by her before it ever touched a Sterling server. What Michael did was not just take credit. He committed IP theft on a massive scale. I watched their faces pale as the realization dawned on them. They thought they were negotiating a severance package. They were actually begging for the rights to the only thing that could save them. So here is what is going to happen, Olivia continued, laying out the terms we had already agreed upon. You are going to transfer the complete, unencumbered intellectual property rights for Odyssey to Ms. Parker's new, yet-to-be-named company. In return, Ms. Sterling, as the company's primary creditor, will provide you with enough liquidity to manage an orderly bankruptcy and dissolution, preventing further criminal liability for the board. You will walk away with your freedom, but nothing else. Ms. Parker gets her creation. Ms. Sterling gets what remains of her family's investment back. This is the only deal on the table. You have 1 hour to accept. They didn't need the hour. They were broken men, adrift in a sea of their own making, and I was holding the only life raft. They agreed to everything. 6 months later, I stood on a different kind of stage. It was a smaller, more modern venue, filled not with sycophants in tuxedos, but with eager tech journalists, venture capitalists, and the core of my old Odyssey team, whom I had hired back the moment the funding came through. Behind me on a massive screen was a simple, elegant logo and 2 words, Aura Systems, my company. I was dressed in a simple, dark blue dress, holding a small remote in my hand. I was nervous, but it was the old, familiar nervousness. The excited, electric thrill of creation, not the gut-wrenching dread of humiliation. For years, I began, my voice clear and steady in the quiet room. We've been told that technology is about disruption, about moving fast and breaking things. But what happens when the thing that breaks is trust? What happens when innovation is built on a foundation of deceit? I clicked the remote, and the screen behind me showed a stylized, beautiful animation of global supply chains, flowing like arteries around the planet. Today, we're launching a new kind of system, a system built on transparency, on integrity, on the core belief that the most powerful algorithm is truth. We call it Aura because it brings clarity to chaos. I looked out at the faces in the audience. They were rapt. I wasn't just launching a product, I was telling a story. My story. The story of a fall and a reclamation. I never mentioned Michael Sterling's name. I never had to. The entire industry knew the story. They knew who I was, and they knew what I had survived. After the presentation, as I was swarmed by well-wishers and potential investors, I saw Sophia standing at the back of the room. She was with Olivia. They weren't smiling exactly, but their eyes held a look of profound, shared victory. Sophia raised her glass to me in a silent toast. Michael Sterling had taken his plea deal. He would serve 7 to 10 years in a minimum security federal prison. His empire was dust. His name was a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms. I had walked out of his party with nothing but my coat and a secret. Now I had my own company, my own creation, and a future I would write myself. He had tried to erase me, to make me a footnote in his story. But in the end, he became a footnote in mine. All it had taken were 2 words, whispered in the dark, to bring everything into the light.